Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of GLAM Chats. My name is Ethel Villafranca, and I am a museologist. That is someone who studies museums. I recently completed my PhD at the University of Melbourne, and my research, Curated Learning, explored teaching strategies of museums that school teachers can adopt in their classroom practice to help students engage with learning on a deeper level. I'm also the curator and exhibition manager of the Museum of Chinese Australian History here in Melbourne. I have been working in museums and libraries since 1998, but whenever I speak to other gallery, library, archive, or museum practitioners or GLAM practitioners, I always learn something new or find something different from my own experience and studies. And I find that quite exciting. So I thought, why not invite GLAM friends and colleagues from different parts of the world so we can talk about the work that we do and the various pathways we've taken to get to where we are in the GLAM world. These conversations are more about the individuals I'm chatting with, but of course, we're also going to talk about the institution they are part of. If you're not a GLAMmer, this is a perfect opportunity to ask us any question you may have about galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. So drop them in the comment section below. Don't be shy. Remember, there are no silly questions. So for our second episode, we have another good friend and fellow Fulbright alumna, Annissa Gultom. Born in Indonesia, Anissa's museum career started as a volunteer guide at the Jakarta History Museum in 2001. She would later on curate her first exhibition in 2006 at the same museum after completing her degree in archaeology. She has since completed her master's in museum communications at the University of the Arts in Pennsylvania and has worked for Museum Kain Project in Bali, Museum of Bank Indonesia in Jakarta, and has also been head curator of a permanent exhibition in Jakarta History Museum, where she started her career. In 2018, Annissa moved to United Arab Emirates to join GSM Project, an international and multidisciplinary firm that focusing on creating memorable visitor experiences. She now leads the Ras Al Khaimah National Museum as its museum director. Hi, Annissa.
Hi.
Welcome to GLAM Chats, and thank you for accepting my invitation to share our conversations with others.
Thank you for having me.
So, Anissa and I go way back. I mentioned that she did her master's in the US. I was doing my master's also around the same time. And we met because we were introduced by a friend because I needed a place where I can crush before the annual conference of museums. And I keep talking about this that the museum network is such a supportive industry. And there you go. If not for the museum network, maybe it's the Fulbright connection. Anyway, so let's start by by you talking about how your day looks like before in the museum, all before COVID started.
Well, basically, it's rarely a dull day for me. There's always something happen, either interesting or catastrophic, like something leaking 10 minutes before office hour is over, or new ideas, or people coming with heritage objects that they found in their field. So it's always an interesting day most of the time before COVID, um, because I have to deal with different kind of people. I have to not only talking to the management or higher management, but also discussing, with collection unit, carpenter, how we can develop our own showcases or mount, or in-house troubleshooting. I really like that, how we can kind of figure out customized solution for the museum, because as you would understand, like every museum, they're all unique. We have our own problems, we have our own limitation, and most of all, we are actually having our own unique audience. But after COVID, things were a little bit more quiet, if I should say it lightly. But we
Did
now,
you have to
sorry,
close down? Did you have, I'm
we are,
sorry, did you have to close
yeah,
down?
yeah. We were closed at the end of April, and then everyone started remote work. That was a really big change for my office, because remote work is not something that is known yet. Not like the rest of the world. It's a little bit different. So there was an adjustment time of going really full digital, and then we are still closed now, but we are planning to reopen in September, inshallah. So we are gearing up to presenting new things, or creating digital things, or virtual stuff, to kind of try to reconnect with people who are not would not be able to come to us.
Are you, is RAK or RAK, shortcut for Ras Al Khaimah,
So
under lockdown, or are people allowed to visit museums, or everyone's expected to stay at home right now?
Right now, because UAE is quite advanced and giving positive result in dealing with the pandemic, things are reopening. The whole country is actually aiming to reopen in September. We have massive testing throughout the country, and recently last week, the COVID testing is actually free of charge for especially for people who are working directly with customers, or frontline, or people who are like in public service and all. So we will be having regular retesting until we have a different kind of solution. So basically, museums open, actually already reopened in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but with measures. So some places you need to book, and some other places will provide you with gloves. Some other places just depends on the availability of space, because this physical distancing is not always possible in all spaces.
Right. I find your museum very interesting, the museum building. So let me just share this screen of, there we go. That's the building, that's the museum building. That's the National Museum of Ras Al Khaimah, correct? Can you tell me a little bit about your building? Because I know, from reading about it, that it was constructed in 1890.
Yeah.
But it was not constructed as a museum. What was it before?
Ah, okay. I didn't get that. Sorry. So at the beginning, it was part of the fortification of Ras Al Khaimah Emirate. So just a quick background. So United Arab Emirates means unification of seven emirates. At one point, Ras Al Khaimah was its own entity, its own state, and this building was part of the fortification of the emirate against attacks from the British and the Portuguese soldiers, army. Sorry, because at the time there was a push of international trade since the around 11 to 12th century, that connects actually this region with Asia and Europe, and well, basically the rest of the world. And then at one point, it became the palace of the father of the current sheikh. There was a time when this building was a police station. So it was having change function until 1987. It became a museum. So you can see in the shape of the buildings, there's you don't really see uniformity because different part of the museum were added in different times.
So now that it's a museum, are you finding it challenging to adjust to the spaces
Oh,
because it was not
definitely,
purposely built?
definitely. That's one of our biggest challenges.
Right. So I'll just show. You have a lovely courtyard,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we'll show a little bit of the interior. Hopefully, this one works.
Okay.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us
So
what we're looking at?
this is some scene from our archaeology gallery, and this gallery hasn't really changed in the past 30 years. And what you see is a soft stone jar. These are the kind of burial goods that you found in Bronze Age and Iron Age tombs that are found in the Emirates. And interestingly, these burial goods, this soft stone, it was imported from Mesopotamia. So there's already connection from this region to Mesopotamia. And you see the potteries on the upper layer. Some of them are imported from Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, which is one of the oldest civilization. So at the time, there is already a connection from this land towards the Indian Peninsula and also to Mesopotamia. Even this sandstone, it can be found up to Middle Asia, which is where those Kazakhstan, Tajikistan countries.
So we have another video.
Okay,
While we're
this
looking at
one,
this, go
this
ahead.
is a little bit interesting, especially if you're an archaeologist, because this one set of objects, it was found in a corner of a kitchen from 10th century, from 10 to 11. It was in the early period of Julfar. So Julfar was the old city, the old port city that actually connects this region with the rest of the world. And Vasco da Gama actually visited Julfar, and he mentioned it in his journal. So this one showcase is a little bit special for me as with the archaeology background. And some people, you know how we archaeologists, we want to put everything in its context, like this is his friend, don't divorce them. This one we found it with this one and this one. So this one is kind of like a cute homage to the long period of archaeological work that has been done in the Emirate, that actually started in 1968 by Beatrice de Cardi, and she was the pioneer in archaeology in the region. So if there's any changes in the exhibition, this one showcase, I kind of really want to keep it as it is.
And I read about this that RAK or RAK
Mm.
has the record of the longest inhabited place, 7,000 years of continuous inhabitation in
Yes, yes.
UAE and possibly around the world, right? So the collections that are showcased in the museum are testaments to that long period of human settlement.
Yes. So the museum building is not so big, but our collection is, I don't know, maybe we have more than 1 million pieces. We have no clear idea yet, because all of these pieces are coming from archaeological excavation and research from 1968. And we found among the oldest remains of the civilization in the Emirates. And as you said, 7,000 is like continuous civilization. There is almost no kind of like gap in between the periods. So we always found something representing this one and this one. So basically, this area has been inhabited by people for all those years. This is possibly because we have a more fertile land in comparison with the rest of the UAE. So Ras Al Khaimah is very unique, as in the west there's the coastal plain area, and then on the east you have the mountain area, and in the middle you have the fertile land with more water, underground water, and also there's a system to kind of gather the rainwater.
Do you get involved in the archaeological diggings or in?
Unfortunately, not yet, but I went to a few of the archaeological survey, because we also do archaeological survey before, let's say, they're going to build a new train track or federal road. So we would go survey and see the surface findings. And the last survey we did was in February and March. That was the start of the pandemic, and we found very much interesting stone tools from Neolithic period. So it was really fun. And this is quite an interesting piece of stone, because this is a Jewish grave marker. So you see the writing; it's a Hebrew writing, and so far this is the only Jewish remain that was found in the UAE. And we have it exhibited in Dubai last year, because last year theme was the year of tolerance. So the whole country wanted to show how UAE is very open to everyone, and to all kind of faith and beliefs.
Right. Okay. So do all the excavation find go to the museum?
Well, in the beginning, yes. In the beginning, yes, but then, sorry, I forgot to turn off the phone. In the beginning, yes, but then we have a massive central storage, and it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. In the past few years, the archaeology department actually started their own on-site storage, so they can analyze it first and then see which one that is um, um worth to display, not worth to display, more like it will be interesting to display to the museum. Like recently they gave us this one gold coin that they found in one of their survey, so they will transfer it to us. But pieces like potteries that not always everyone can understand, they will keep it in their storage.
So this must be very exciting for you, having having a background in having a degree in archaeology. All these archaeological digs and archaeological finds must be extremely thrilling for you. But you've also had other work in the GLAM field that are not heavily rooted in archaeology.
Yeah.
So my question is, what do you find as most thrilling, most exciting, or most fulfilling part of your work in GLAM?
Well, as I mentioned to you before, um, I like messy stuff, which means I like to find solution. In the beginning, I mentioned about how we talk with different part of the museum to kind of look for customized solution for any problems that we have. So uh, museums are always having limit in budget. So I always say this: no budget is not the main problem. No creativity is the problem.
Right.
So
Although it would be nice to have a lot of money. And that's actually one question I have for you. Um, as a national museum in UAE, do you also have to deal with budget cuts and limited budgets?
Most definitely. Most definitely. That is one thing that you don't really get in the university. It is really like a real life kind of problem that you just have to learn on the job. Because of pandemic, the budget cut was really big, and even before the pandemic, we already had some kind of a budget cut, and we have to adjust to it, and now we have to gear more. Even actually, this just happened a few days ago. Now every department have to have their own budget team. As in, we have the finance department, but now they want
Mhm.
every department to have a kind of like a budget team, and kind of probably like finding the right priorities of every
Mhm.
department, so we can really kind of fight for what we what really want to achieve as a department. So I know if I mentioned in the beginning, the museum is under the Department of Antiquities and Museums. So antiquities means, you know, archaeology and everything. So we have to work with archaeologists, we have to work with documentation center and intangible heritage and everything. So we kind of be like a team. So the museum, the National Museum, is not its own team, it's part of a larger team.
And when I asked you before about this, um, about what you find most fulfilling, what you enjoy most about your work, your response was this one. About that, it's Maricondo.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit about?
Sorry.
Can you tell us why you think your work is kind of like Maricondo? The joy, or does this spark joy? Is that how you select objects to display? Does this object spark joy? No, it doesn't. Okay, back in the story.
It's a little bit like that. Like, if you follow Marie Kondo, one of her quote is, when you're trying to declutter your items, let's say you are having too many shirts, you're having too many books, deal with these objects, and ask yourself, does this object sparks joy to you, right? So that's actually what happened when, let's say, we are developing an exhibition, or we want to
Mhm.
post something on social media. Thus this object will spark joy to yourself, to the audience, and will it represent joy that the museum kind of want to present, right? And in another sense, this, if you see one of her some most of her videos are kind of like how to navigate the amount of objects that you have in limited space, how to make it efficiently using the space. And that is basically what most museums are doing. Most of museums are not really having the privilege of unlimited space. Like, my museum is in a heritage space. It's not an easy thing to, just open the wall, or making another floor, or having a new building next to it. So we have to learn things like that, and I feel the joy of, we can fit everything in, or or kind of like, okay, this is something that doesn't look like interesting, but then we work on it and we package it, and then it looks, people are like, wow, I never know that, wow, that is actually really interesting. So that's the kind of philosophy that I use, Maricondo philosophy.
I might invite you to Maricondo, my house. I might not. I might end up with an empty space. Anyway, speaking of objects that spark joy, I know you mentioned that you have over 1 million collections in the museum. Do you have a particular object that you really, really like, or your favorite object?
Well, in some of the objects displayed in the museum, I honestly don't not yet having a favorite item because I mean I just stay here for 1 year, so I don't really have the kind of emotional bond yet. But there is this one specific object that I really like. It's a new object that
Mhm.
this one heritage association gave me. So this is a kind of like a small
Oh,
axe, and it's
axe.
long, and it's long, and so people are using it either as a cane, or they hang their bags over here, sorry, over here, when they are traveling up and down the mountain. So this comes from the Shehi tribe, which is one of the mountain that lives in the mount. Sorry, which is one of the tribe lives in the mountain. We work with different culture groups for our craft festival, for Heritage Festival, and we really want to get them more involved in our exhibition. So we actually want to involve them in the new concept or our ethnography gallery, that we have areas at the end of the exhibition that will be something alive, something coming from the Heritage Association, because we have quite a few Heritage Association here, and also private museums. There's about around 24 private museums. So the
Are the
interest of
museums are the
sorry.
museums are the museums mostly historical archaeological museums? What kinds of
Um,
museums?
it's kind of like a mix, but mostly they collect heritage objects that comes as from object as young as from the 80s, the 90s. They even collect this kind of like plastic toys from our childhood. They have this kind of awareness of how these objects later on would have value. So it's really interesting how the local Emirati communities here are having a high awareness of preserving the objects and kind of really preserving the stories. Like this it's called jerts, Gerz, jerts. So I had to spell it. So these are actually coming most probably from the Iranian Pakistani shared region of Baluchi, and the Baluchi has been travel here since long time, and this becoming part of the Rasa Khaimah heritage cultural identity, and they still remaking this. So this is as an object. This one is new, but as a concept, it's already very old, and they keep making this. This is part of if a man go to a wedding, they need to
Oh,
bring this. This
oh,
is this is part of their garb. They can either use
part.
it to join the dance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, part of their garb. Well, they have
Yes, part of their
the
living heritage.
yes, yes.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now, you talk. So I mentioned that you are originally from Indonesia, and then you went to the U.S. to study, and then you went back to Indonesia. How did you end up in UAE?
Faith. Well, a little bit that, and how to say it without having too much of self-centered story. Basically, I try to expand my horizon after long years of working in Indonesian museums. I mean, I worked in Indonesian museums since my first job was 2001, and when I came back in 2010 from the US, the government have a museum revitalization program. So it was like it was like a rush. So I got the chance to experience developing different kind of projects for different kind of museums. It taught me things, and it shows different kind of facets of Indonesian culture industry. And in 2017, I feel like I think I need to find other experience, or so I started actually applying to different museum jobs abroad. But the first chance actually come from uh, a few companies that is based in Dubai that found my profile on LinkedIn.
So let me clarify. Did you apply to this job?
This job I
No,
applied.
not this one. The first job, the
The
one
first
with
one
GSM
I
project. Yeah.
didn't apply. No, they just found my profile on LinkedIn, and they start communicating with me, and they ask for updated CV and stuff, and arrange for a few interviews.
And that, my friends, is why we need our LinkedIn updated. You might find your next day, your next job might find you on
Yeah,
LinkedIn. You
yeah.
never know. But this job at GSM, you were involved in the curatorial team and not just linked in one particular institution, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So basically, the company is it's a design company, and especially the one in Dubai, focusing a lot on museum design, exhibition design, and they have a content team, which is people, curatorial and having research. Um, that our function was to kind of translate what the client wants to display. Like, let's say maybe they have an in-house curator, or they only have an administrative team, like they want to show the history of Dubai Creek or something. So we will work on the content and kind of like translate how communicate it with the design. They will kind of translate in the different aspect of design, either colors or typography, or the flow of the stories and all of this.
And is that quite normal in UAE? Because in the and I'm asking you this because you've been exposed to museum practices in the US and then also in Indonesia, so Southeast Asia, because of the network that you have, and then in UAE because having moved there and having been involved with GSM project. Now in the Philippines and as far as I know in Australia, most big museums get consultants or design firms to curate and put up uh, big exhibitions. But for smaller museums, such as the museum I'm part of right now, we do everything in house. It, what is the how does it work in UAE in terms of creating exhibitions?
Well, this is something that I just discovered when I started working in Dubai, that um, the amount of human resource to have things done in house, they don't have enough yet, because it's still kind of like a new initiative in the past year. I mean, Louvre Abu Dhabi, they just opened in 2017, I think. And they need consultant to kind of uh, revamp or renew their museum into an international standard. They have museum already since the early year of their unification, so around 71, 72. Each Emirates have their own museums. They are showing their uniqueness of their of each Emirates. So they already have this, but then they want to kind of have like an international touch. You know what I mean? But in my museum, we are not yet. There was, I think, there was an effort for that in the past, but as situation with the pandemic, super limited budget and everything. So we kind of have to do things in house.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we
There,
don't have a curator yet, so I have to be the curator.
oh, so there's no curator is in in your museum. So you are heavily involved in curating exhibitions. Is that common
Yep,
in the different museums? Oh, I see.
yep, yep.
Are there
Um,
training programs for museum workers? Is there a degree in museum studies or training programs so that they are um, equipped to do exhibitions in house?
well, there were a few programs that were established when in the process of making the Louvre Abu Dhabi, I think, and there was a major in Abu Dhabi, I think, but not focused on for museum, but for like cultural heritage preservation and development in a larger sense. I think there was an archaeology uh, major, I think, in one of the leading university, but I think that one was discontinued. But they have history majors. They have history majors. They have Emirati studies majors, and in terms of design, especially for Dubai have their own Dubai design district. In terms of design, Dubai are one of the leading kind of like force in terms of interior design and everything. I mean, interior design here is a big deal. At the beginning, when I first lived here, I don't understand why there are maybe 4 or 5 interior design stores in one street.
Oh,
So the culture here, they like to renew their interior once a year.
oh, so that's interior in their house.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
does that transfer to how they do museums as well, or is it more permanent exhibition forever and ever?
I kind of want to kind of like connect that that sense of they like to refresh their own house once a
Mhm.
year every Eid. So Eid is like kind of the Muslim Christmas, um, and that's why for the new ethnography gallery we finished the restoration. So I introduced the concept of having at least 2 or 3 temporary exhibition on ethnography subjects, because we have limited space and we don't want to only showing surface information of. In total we have around 22 tribes in the 70s. So that's a lot of subject, and there's a lot of topics. So if we can just have like a clear exhibition calendar event for 2 to 3 years, that would be actually very nice.
How what uh, um who do you work with in creating exhibitions?
Which one are they? My museum or the rest of the
Your
museums?
museum.
So far,
Why
we
are
are
you
doing most
laughing?
of the we are
Why are
doing
you
most of the things in house.
in
We are
house?
Yes. So basically, in the past, I think starting earlier, no, maybe starting November or December, I'm training 2 young Emirati staff to do curatorial work, to do research and curatorial, to really introduce them. This is how we can kind of like translate this. Okay, you're doing your research, so this is how we can kind of break it down on providing information that will not make people fall asleep, and we're not providing them a book to read in the exhibition room. And then we also collaborate with our carpenters to experiment in making mount
Are
and
the
stand and
carpenters
jar
in
for,
house as
yeah.
well? So you have carpenters employed?
Sorry.
Are your carpenters in
Yes.
house as well?
Yes.
I love the carpenters
Yes.
to work
I
with.
think.
When I was in Lopez Museum, we have an old guy. His name is Mang Doming. He's been with the museum for a really long time. He's really good at executing whatever we want in the gallery spaces because it's I that one what used to the building also was an old structure, so we have
Mm-hmm.
very limited opportunities to bring down walls and all that. So we
Right.
had to be more creative. So it really helps to have very skilled people, electricians, carpenters,
Yeah.
that can execute our vision of how the exhibition looks like. I think this is something that not a lot of not a lot of non museums um, forget that it's not just the curators, it's not just the admin people. There are actually a lot of skilled workers that we employ in the industry, right?
Yeah.
And all this beautiful exhibition will not come into fruition if not for their, the skills that they have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having this insight about museums in Indonesia, in the US, and a little bit about UAE, what do you see is the similarities and or you can go on the other on the flip side, maybe the differences, significant differences in terms of museum practice.
Well, one of the things that I found uh, very similar is we are all having a problem of asset management. And asset management, this includes storage management, database, access to the data, data migration, and all of this, because it's actually very, very important to have a clear and reliable asset management, because you should think like if you're having a store and you want to sell something, and you have to know what's your inventory, right?
Right.
Exactly, right. So but the problem is the the work related to asset management is very much in the back end, so in the kitchen where people doesn't really see it. And most museums management really prefers to prioritize things that are easily to see,
Yeah,
it's in the public eyes and
I
everything,
cannot
but
agree
actually,
with you more about that. I can't
sorry.
agree with you more. I cannot agree with you more about that. So the work that is the work that the public sees, like exhibition, public program, gets all of the attention and a lot of our time,
Yeah.
um, because we seem to never have enough time in a whole day to work in a museum. My current role as curator and exhibition manager, part of my role is also taking care of the collection. And while we don't have a million objects in our collection, we only have about 8,000, over 8,000 objects. I find that because we're all part time, when we have to prioritize when we were still open, it's what happens is the collection scare gets pushed to the back burner because we're opening an exhibition and people will see this
Yep.
exhibition. We have to
Yep.
focus on this. So the
Yep.
pandemic actually gave us a chance to focus before before Victoria imposed the lockdown, the stage 4 lockdown. It gave us
Mm-hmm.
a chance to work more closely on the collections. And I agree with your comment that it's really critical to have a good collections database because it's the heart of the museum. The collection, the objects that have been given to us to take care of, if we can't find them, if we don't know what
Exactly.
they are because we don't have a good enough collections database, it's really difficult to do our job.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and it's excruciating every time. Let's say there's a request from other museum to see if they can loan the objects from of this one and this one, and it's really not efficient. Like I need two Marie Kondo to fix this thing. Um, and actually, if you have a good asset management system, you can actually have it shown for the public, because everything now is becoming very much virtual. So we need things to be digitalized. We need to have their information, and we need for the digital version of the objects to be ready for different kind of things. You can have an online exhibition. You can have an online repository that is safe for the objects and also for the people. So yeah, that's one of the main thing that is actually intrigue my interest, and I would really want to actually make a change in that area in my current job.
So, in terms of the Rock National Museum, who are your usual visitors? Because in Australia and in the US and even in the Philippines, school field trips. We get buses and buses and buses of school children who visit museums. Is that the same in RAC?
We are actually having more family visitors in the weekend and tourists. So the buses comes usually from tourists. Here, museum visit for school is not as obliged, like in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they have this like obligation for school, especially elementary and middle school, to come to the museum, and they will come in buses, 2 3 buses, and the museum will be flooded by kids running around and all of this. We don't do that here. Usually the school will contact the museum first, and they will ask the kind of subject that we can present or we can discuss with the kids. So there will be a kind of tour, and then there will be a program in our education classroom to discuss with the kids. So, and we also have summer camp for the kids. So this is like beyond the school. Usually we connect with the parents.
Tell us more about the summer camp.
Mm, mm. In previous year, the summer camp also involved kind of like mini excavation in one of our
Oh,
sites. Yeah, so the kids can kind of meet the archaeologists. The archaeologists can kind of show what they're doing, and we actually had a plan to do that in this December when the team from the Palace Museum of Beijing. Palace Museum is the one inside the
mhm.
Forbidden
Forbidden
Palace.
City.
No, it's the big
Forbidden
palace
City.
in Beijing. Yeah, they come here every year in the past few years because we have collection that is coming from China, Celadon ceramics. So they had an excavation in December, and we were actually planning to bring students to go to the site and then talk with the archaeologists, and the archaeologists can show them the fresh finding, like, oh, you know what, this little piece of ceramic, this was a diplomatic piece. So this is not just another plate. This is someone who brought this piece here was an ambassador from the Chinese empire. So that was the plan. But in December we had a really horrible rain. So we have rain here, and sometimes when it rained, it really pours. As in, like, suddenly we have like flood and people can't go anywhere. So in other countries you have, snow day. We
Yes.
have we have flood day a few times. Yeah.
Oh. Oh well. So, are you planning to do that when the borders open and it's safe this year? Are you planning to do a summer camp? Wait, hang on. When is your? Because I'm getting confused. Our summer in Australia is December, January, February. When is your
Okay.
summer?
Well, summer starts May until around August, so we already finished the summer. So,
Okay, so it's
but
for
we
next
have
year.
but we have a plan to kind of try offering it for the winter because the kids are going back to school very soon. I think it depends on the school. They have different kind of policy. Some of them are going back to school fully. In the younger years are having like more part time going back to school, but we don't know yet if the kids can go to public spaces after the school hours, because before the school closed down, the first policy from the government was that there is no extracurricular was allowed at the beginning of the pandemic, so there was no programs outside of the school. So we just need to wait how the public health policy going to, you
I
know
think
going to come.
I think many museums, and this I know from museums in the Philippines, museums here in Australia, museums in the US. Many of the museums are really suffering because a big chunk of the income of museum come from school groups. That definitely is the case in a lot of museums here, and so um, um, the pandemic is undoubtedly has a very devastating effect um, in the GLAM for GLAM institutions. But do you see any silver lining for this? Because in my point of view, I know it's excruciating for a lot of institutions, but it's also pushing institutions to rethink how they do things, how they operate, and
Mm.
reevaluate what their strengths are so that they can revisit how the role that they play in society. So any other silver lining that you see with this pandemic for museums?
Well, for the context of my museum, the silver lining is the push to be more digital.
Mm.
So that's really a kind of big force that I see gonna change the way people communicate, the way people make their work more efficient. We are actually, like, the amount of meetings are reduced significantly. Sometimes there are I personally don't like too many meetings. Like, some meetings you can just do it in an email, right? And that's I think one of the silver lining on that, like in the method of work. So people start to, you just have to work. You don't have to wait until your someone is there. You can just continue your work, your whatever you are. And basically, yeah, the biggest silver lining is going digital. Really big push to go digital.
Thank you for sharing that. It's been so lovely to catch up with you. I learned so much because I've never been to any museum in the Middle East, not in UAE or anywhere else. So all these things that we've been talking about since, we haven't actually seen each other since
10 years.
2009. Yes,
11 years. Okay.
11 years, but we have been in touch continuously, talking about our jobs, um, or sharing resources. And we do have common friends, which I really find
Yeah.
very interesting. interesting. It's a small world, isn't it? So thank you so much for sharing with us your experience, your insights about working in UAE and your experience also working in Indonesia. Now, next week, no, not next week, on Saturday, we have another guest, this time from a library. We have Justine Hanna. She is a librarian, but she does more than things that are beyond being a librarian. She is a certified bibliophile, and she has this podcast on books and drinks and food pairings. She's a very very interesting person, and I hope all of you guys watching us today can also join us on Saturday, same time, 3 p.m. in Melbourne, 1 p.m. in Manila, 9 a.m. in UAE, and so we can have a chat with Chris, with Justine. And with that, I want to thank you, Anissa, for
Thank you for
your
having
time, and I hope to catch you again on Facebook, chatting until the wee hours. And for everyone else watching us, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you again. And for the meantime, take care, stay safe, be kind to others, but also be kind to yourself. Bye.
Bye.